Hey, yo, welcome into the Sunday edition of the Triple Play Fantasy Walkabout. Whole team is here this time, right? It's all three. We've been a little here and there over the last little while, but look, it's the Content Dead Zone. These things happen. I am getting a Content Dead Zone t-shirt made because I love it so much. I just want to start the show off. Huge shout out, Scott Fishbowl Potathon. I believe it is still going. 36 hours straight. We, of course, made our appearance, Lucas, Jacob, and I. Absolute pleasure to join Sal in that, especially with Toys for Tots being the charity. Absolutely phenomenal. We'll have the links in the show description for everyone to go and donate. If you haven't, I believe they've passed over $40,000 in donations so far.
It's just nuts.
Insane. Yeah. Extra $1,000 to have Chase Vernon Fantasy Intervention wax his chest, which has happened today. Jacob will be drafting Ezekiel Elliott in round 1. If we hit the $500 donations, you can go check his page. It should be his pinned tweet for that information if you want to see Jacob draft Ezekiel Elliott. And we did say that I would get Ezekiel Elliott t-shirts made for Jacob if that happens. So lots of donation information. Lots of great things happening. But of course, I am your host with the most time in his hands. I am Thomas Tipple, FF, and my fun fact of the day is the Toronto Blue Jays went from being one of the top 5 teams in baseball to now having one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball. Why is this a fun fact? Because today was the first day all year that I decided I'd rather stab myself in the eyes than watch them play.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, my name is Lucas Gilbert. You can find me on Twitter at @TheCuteHurts. My fun fact for today is that tomorrow is the premiere of The Bachelorette. And you all can join me in watching as Rachel and Gabby try to find true love together. And so first time that they have 2 bachelorettes. So that's what I'm doing tomorrow night.
Fair to say I will not be joining you. My name is Tomlie. You can find me at Tom_Lee92. And my fun fact was that this weekend cost me 8 times 8 on my alcohol intake than it would have in the US. I was looking up alcohol prices here compared to the US because amidst a drinking weekend, why not? And yes, the tax on alcohol over here is 8 times what it is in the US and Canada.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. And you're still all animals. Like you're still just nonstop.
That's the concern. Yeah, that'll we drink really weak piss.
Oh my God. And look, Andy's here. Tom, not watching baseball. I know their pitching is just so bad. I just didn't feel like the heartbreak today. Couldn't do it. Look, what are we doing on today's show? The last couple of weeks, we have been going through team breakdowns. And you know what I realized? We're duplicating content on the Triple Play YouTube page as the Dave Mendy and all those guys are already doing it. So communication error on my part. So you know what that means? We're shifting gears. We're switching it up. We're doing something different today. We are going to go through players that and look, there's 672,000 podcasts out there. We're not going to tell you about who we think is a deep sleeper. There's no such thing anymore. One thing I learned watching the Podathon is how many people all said the same kind of thing. There's no such thing as sleepers. You're not going to get it. Now we're looking at 5th string tight ends on teams that might break out based on, one metric. Okay, so sleepers aren't a thing. We're not going to talk about players that we're in on, we're out on. We're not doing that. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to look at 3 players, so 1 player each, that we see a ADP spike coming. We are going to try to predict an ADP spike in 3 players. We're going to give a couple of reasons why. Why does that matter? Because right now, it is the dog days of drafting. Okay, shout out Underdog, who is the presenting sponsor. It is the dog days. It is the max entry Jacob Sanderson, right? Entry 300 teams into the Puppy 2. We are all doing 10 dynasty drafts already at this point. The people drafting at this time of year, guys, they are the lunatics. That's us.
Animals.
So I think, just to give you a little preview, I think that there are going to be ADP spikes for some of these players that we may not be wanting to draft. So we're going to go through that, do a little bit differently. At the end, because Lucas and I were trying to figure out what we're going to do for the people. A little bit different, getting back to kind of what the Walkabout was all about. Well, I hate drafting running backs. I think we all know this, gents. I talk about it constantly. Today, we are going to build my running back tiers live and on air. I have been putting it off because I don't ever want to admit running backs are good. So we're going to do it live. We're going to try to make it as entertaining as possible. Jamie is up here in the chat. What up, Jamie? We call ourselves degenerates. It's true. It's true. But that's why I think there's going to be ADP spikes on these guys coming up. So we're going to get into that. Quick break before we do that. When we come back, we're going to get right into the ADP of it all and the predictions. Good to go. We got a little bit more info, but I think I've talked enough to get this going. So let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get into it. My Tomlie is that you need to be a little smarter with your ADPs, just in general. We understand that young wide receivers carry value for longer. We understand that young players, rookie players, draft picks, right? They hold and increase value more often than not. These dusty running backs can be and are replaceable. I think it was Pat Kerrane of A Good Football Show over at NBC Sports Edge said the dead zone starts at 101. Yep. See, Pat Kerrane gets it. It is hard to rank running backs and actually build out our tiers when you just don't value the position the same. So we got Tomlie around the world over there in Australia. He tends to like himself some running backs. We got Lucas down below here, not in Australia, but he also tends to like himself some running backs. So it'll be interesting to see. And I am publishing these. These will be published.
You're
These
official.
top 25s official on the Fantasy Pros website for True North Fantasy Football. So these are going up. These will go up when they are done. Okay.
Fingers crossed we don't blow it.
Look, yeah, we're gonna. Scott Fishbowl, we went through all that. You're gonna want to go check out the Podathon. Let's punish the Tomlie here, guys. Now, this is just a casual conversation. It's midday for me. I think it's 5 o'clock. I think it's 6:20 for Lucas. It is still early in the morning for Tomlie coming off of one. But we're gonna have a drink. We're gonna sit here and have a conversation about predicting ADP risers. So, if you want, I just want to point this out before we get going. If you want more of the previous episodes of Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast, you can go to Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast YouTube channel. We have 45-second clips, minute-long clips. We have full episodes. We have all the Big Bank of Billies, the People v RTDB. All that stuff is all there on the channel. You can also go to Triple Play Fantasy. They have great Austin Eckler interviews, other players, just phenomenal content over there. So you can go that. You get all your Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast content. Okay, I've talked enough. I want to start with Lucas, player that you're predicting an ADP spike between now and when more casual players start jumping into the mix, attributing to the ADP.
So Thomas mentioned that I do like myself some running backs. And so that's kind of where I was looking the most at, looking at these ADP risers. And for me, one name that's just standing out to me is Dameon Pierce. His ADP right now has gone from 48 to 39 to 40, as you can see on the bottom there. But I think that he has some room to move up, especially whenever we start getting even more news coming out of Texans camp. And if he is solidifying himself over Marlon Mack, because it's not going to be hard for him to beat out Rex Burkhead. So I think that at a minimum, he's going to move up into the early 30s in running backs. But he could be a sneaky person who's going to move up into maybe the top 25 of RBs whenever more casual fans start coming in, because they're going to look at some of these other situations, like with the Dolphins in particular. And I think that a lot of people are going to be able to talk themselves into Dameon Pierce over Chase Edmonds, definitely over Raheem Mostert, Sonny Michel, all of them. So he's going to go up. And right now, whether you believe in Dameon Pierce or not, this is the lowest his value is going to be until he actually steps on the field. Now, some of us more experienced managers, we're sitting back and we already value Dameon Pierce at this level because we know that's what people are going to end up paying for him. So it's going to be hard to get him at this ADP value, but it's going to just keep going up. And eventually his price is going to keep going up as well.
It's kind of insane when you look at where Dameon Pierce is going in terms of even the rookie running backs. So if you go over to Keep Trade Cut, you got James Cook. He's obviously the first rookie running back off the board. Then Rachaad White's the second running back within the ranks. And for some reason, Isaiah Spiller is still like kicking around RB33 over there on the old Keep Trade Cut platform. Use whatever platform ADP you want. This is the easiest one for me to type in and look up. So that's what we're using in case you're wondering. And then Dameon Pierce is chilling right in between a pair of New England Patriots running backs, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. So let's play the game. Would you rather have Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Dameon Pierce?
Oh, that's the tricky one for me. And I honestly rather take the dart throw on Dameon Pierce at this point.
Okay, Tomlie.
Well, this is why I really like Dameon Pierce as this ADP possible price riser, because the people he has to walk over to get there are people like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So right now, without any extra news, I don't really care which one you take. For me, I'll go with what Lucas said and say Dameon Pierce. But you're sort of paying the same sort of rookie pick price for both. So, you know, if you like Clyde, you think he can come back and do something else, take that. I'm not going to be offended either way. It's not a clear-cut one. But it was the nicest of the three that we'll talk about, and I don't want to do any spoilers here, but it was the nicest, clearest path because of the sort of monotony of players between 25 and 40 or the running backs, where if he does get that opportunity, he will go straight through them all and get to where we know he can be.
Right, and that's why I wanted to ask, because you have, let's go just straight from RB25, Mitchell, Connor, James Cook, Pollard, Sanders, Clyde, Kareem Hunt, Rachaad White, Isaiah Spiller, Dameon Harris, Dameon Pierce. There's not a lot of room for him to go. So, Lucas, when you made this as your selection, it kind of made me think, like, really have to think about the path to get there. I don't see him jumping somebody like James Conner, even if he gets a starting role. I don't see him jump. I could see him jumping Tony Pollard because as the casuals come in, I don't think Tony Pollard is really going to be as high at this point. Miles Sanders, I mean, toss up. I'd rather have Sanders, which really hurts to say. And then I'd rather have Kareem Hunt, Rachaad White, and I would definitely rather have Dameon Pierce over Damian Harris and Isaiah Spiller. So I just find that interesting that you think that he's going to see a spike because I don't see it being super likely.
So I'm using DLF right now, and I'm looking between RB30 and RB40 where Dameon Pierce currently sits. And why I think there's going to be this ADP spike is because there's so many ambiguous backfields between 30 and 40. Because if he gets the news, or if people start getting the news coming out of camp that he is the running back one there, and also they're in the deep webs of...
That's the key to this.
Yeah.
The key to this is that he established himself over the others. Yeah.
So I think he will.
If he does that, I
news.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be that news coming out of camp saying that he can definitely pass Penny. He'll pass Cordero Patterson. He'll pass James Robinson.
I don't know.
I don't know about Devin Singletary. I think he's going to pass Rachaad White because people are going to go and see Leonard Fournette going in a little bit higher up in your drafts and go, why am I going to take an RB2 on a team whenever I can have an RB1? They're not sure. I don't think people are going to be thinking that deep into it and very easily could just go, I want the RB1 on a team. Let's move on. He's the person in this range. And I think that's going to move him up.
All right, I'll take that. Andy, look, it's not firing off. I'm curious. I don't see it. So when you don't agree, you got to ask these questions. This is what we're here for. Mm-hmm. Look, if you want a bunch of people that are going to sit around and just hang out with one another and agree, then there are places for you to do that. But it ain't here. It ain't here. Tomlie, player that you think is going to see an absolute value spike in the next couple of months when the casuals start coming around.
I was going to say this whole segment is punishing a Tomlie, so that's what the beer is for. If it gets awkward, if it gets tight, just have a few sips and we'll carry on. We'll move on. So the guy for me, and what I like about all three of these guys that we'll pick, so the guy for me is Allen Robinson. So Tom will have a QB. We'll get to that in a second. Lucas picked a running back. I thought, let's go a little bit different. Let's go wide receiver. So Allen Robinson's positional ADP since March has been 39, 39, 31, and 39, right? So there was that month where all of the rookie drafts hit and the excitement around all the rookie guys comes in. Everyone slides up slightly, which means that Robinson got sort of a little bit of clear air, and then all of a sudden he gets pushed back because all these rankings shuffle around again. So for me, comparable to a guy like Mike Evans, whose ADP positioning has stayed at 22 this entire time, they're the exact same age. Yes, Evans has a great opportunity with Tom Brady this year, but for me, with Allen Robinson signing that contract, connected to one of the most high-powered offenses, and we saw how profitable it could be for whether it's Cooper Kupp, whether it's Robert Woods, whether it's OBJ, this is a guy who will score points. So the average player is not going to necessarily see the age or the difference. They're just going to be comparing, where does this guy sit? It's a well-known team. It's a well-known offense. And I think a lot of these rookie guys, because not all of them will start the year well, you'll see this huge spike and push for Allen Robinson to start rejoining where everyone thought he could be a few years ago. So he's not going to slide right up into the top 20 per se, but 39 gives you a lot of space to move amongst this sort of monotony of wide receiver threes that we always talk about. So he, for me, stood out as a guy that I think you can still get around this ADP and I think is worth more. So therefore, I think as the casual player joins, you'll start to see a spike in his ADP.
Who did you use for your ADP rankings?
This was DLF.
Okay.
Yeah, it's important to note that. And not like Allen Robinson too. I think early on in the process, Tomlie, you and I were talking about what picks we'd be willing to sell off for a player like Allen Robinson. I think we stuck at 110, 111. I think I'd still be willing to do that, considering the 110, 111 would be somebody like, I don't know, Christian Watson, who I'm not totally sold on.
Yeah.
I think there is a real chance, though, and I think it's not talked about enough. There is a possibility that Allen Robinson is just dust at this point. Like, there's a lot of things that we can make up for. It's Matt Nagy. Yeah, he wasn't feeling it. He got COVID. He was down a couple of pounds. It was a rookie quarterback. It was Mooney semi-breaking out. Cole Kmet's, I don't know, dope in some people's eyes for some reason. Yeah, he's there. I think that's a little bit more appropriate. But I think it's very much possible that he could just be dust. And if he's dust, then I think that we're looking at a real problem scenario. So
I think that's the key to this segment, right? Is that we're not necessarily stands for these guys as the value, but for the average player to join, all I'm saying here is that I think they'll start putting the links together in their own head that the possibility is there, and they probably haven't been burnt as much with Allen Robinson like we were last year and the year before. So there's a clearer path for them to push his ADP up. Whether or not people believe that's going to be the value he's worth, that's different. And I think that's the same for Lucas, because it's drawing that line between Dameon Pierce for him, and all you got to do is convince yourself of that narrative to see the spike. So it's not that we necessarily think these guys are worth much higher ADP. I think he's still undervalued, but it's not going to be necessarily the value that we see replicated in the ADP.
So looking at the ADPs right now, just drawing an arbitrary line, someone like Juju Smith-Schuster, I very much can see people talking themselves into Allen Robinson over Juju if those are the two wide receivers that you're having to choose from. Me personally, I still have Allen Robinson ranked as my 40th wide receiver in my dynasty ranking, so he's going around where I have him. And like you said, this isn't saying this is somebody we believe in over this price. This is somebody we see their price or their ADP is going to start going up a lot. And I think we're really about to see that. You start looking or listening to different podcasts, and they're already really hyping up Allen Robinson right now. So I think he's due for a big spike.
I can see it. Oh my God, the layer of wide receiver that exists within Allen Robinson's spot, I think it'd be very easy to pick up. Again, I'm going to be a naysayer. You look at the season Matthew Stafford had last year, and people are loving themselves in Matthew Stafford this year already in drafts and in trades. I've traded him away. He was 11th in points per game, if I'm not mistaken, at the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. That's not good considering you had arguably the greatest wide receiver season of all time under your belt, and that's still all you could put up. The end of the year was just Stafford reliving his days in Detroit, doing his best to not take the Rams to the Super Bowl. So I think that there's something to be said there, and that they were so quick to just run the ball, no matter how inefficient it was, for them to do so. So let's not get lost in that. Now, the number 2 wide receiver, I believe it was JJ Zachariza that said on our show that he would rather have the number 1 wide receiver on a bad offense than a number 2 wide receiver on a very good offense. Now, this is really going to come to, are you going to be happy with the production of a guy who's quite probably going to finish as a low-end wide receiver 2? I don't have his numbers in front of me, and I wish I did, because, professionalism and stuff. But Odell was a very good wide receiver 2 for you when he finally got acclimated, and it's really unfortunate what happened to him. Do I think Allen Robinson can do that again? Sure. I am worried that he's dust. Do I think he's better than Robert Woods? I don't think so, because the best part about Allen Robinson was that he was just getting every target, right? In all of his boom years, he was just getting every target. He's not going to have that now. New system coming in, maybe not new system, but new offensive coordinators. Their coach had left, so we don't know how that's going to work. How are they going to run their systems? There's a lot of moves. You can't just copy and paste. Oh, this is the Robert Woods role. Well, the Robert Woods role wasn't the role that OBJ played when he was there. They basically crafted a new one for him. You cannot copy and paste a player. Granted, the money, awesome. Following the money doesn't always work. I think there are red flags here. I think you're right, Tomlie, in that Allen Robinson likely will see a spike at ADP. I don't think I want him to see a spike in ADP. I think he's a player you're going to want to avoid that happening for.
Yeah, this just means he will not be on very many of my teams.
Exactly. That's exciting. That's the exciting part, right? Because if he goes up, it pushes your guys' value down, which is what we want as drafters as well. So if you're hearing this and you're going, they're talking shit and saying Allen Robinson's going to be fantastically valued, be excited, because that will push your guys down the board to you. And this is what you want to see. You want to see the everyday drafter pushing guys that you don't like up, so you can get your guys at a better value and better cost.
Come on, Amon-Ra. Just keep
exactly,
just go up in front
perfect
of him,
example.
and I will be
perfect
happy.
Example.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra. Oh my gosh. Just
I don't have any hope that he's going to go in front of Judy, so I can't get that guy at a discount. But
oh my God. Okay, look, and for me, you're right. We're going to take a running back. We're going to take a receiver. We're going to yeet tight end because Tomlie hates them, and if I put them in, he might not have shown up for the show. Look, I think it's Tua. I think Tua is going to receive a value spike because I think he has to, right? So obviously, if you follow Jacob, you know that he absolutely cannot stand Tua. Last name I'm not going to attempt to enunciate because I'm going to butcher it. So the last couple of years, right, since 2020, he was being drafted at 12.45. This is a positional ranking. We got him at 16.25. And then his situation drastically got better when you come to off-season quarterbacks. Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to sign one of the best bookend left tackles in the game. All right, he's left-handed. That's his play side. I like that. I vibe with that. Okay, big money. Oh, your dusty coach was stubborn, and you had, co-offensive coordinators for some stupid reason. Guess what? Yay! They're gone now. Oh, we have this young, I think fake sharp, we'll find out, offensive coach from San Francisco that runs a style to your benefit. Oh, bring him in. Oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to say fuck them draft picks, and we're going to go and get one of the best wide receivers in football, not just for the game of football, but in fantasy football. And we're just going to bring him on in with our emerging first-round wide receiver, Jalen Waddle. Oh, we're also going to get a couple of running backs on the cheap and not overspend for it so we can, improve elsewhere. What did he have go wrong for him that Tua is now being drafted later than ever? And I understand. Tua wasn't great, okay? Before anyone jumps down my throat and be like, Tua, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I understand. But bring it down and not bring it back down. Okay, let's see the positives. He's just left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo. I understand that. I get that. However, as the 17th quarterback off the board right now, I think 17.67 positionally, according to Dynasty League Football right now, I think he has a legitimate chance to creep his way back up. And I think that he can find his way back into the top 12 when the casual drafters starts popping their heads back in around, mid-August. I think his August ADP will have a legitimate shot to pop into the top 12. Do I think it should go there? No. But let's have a listen. These are the players being drafted around. Oh my gosh, if my mouse would actually work, that would be great. Positionally, Jalen Waddle, where do you think he's being drafted right now as of June 2022?
Wide receiver 17.
Jalen Waddle, 17.
Let's say
Okay,
11.
Tomlie. It is 11.
Ooh.
In May, it was 8. April 7th. March 7th. February 8th. Tyreek Hill, where do you think he's being drafted? Let's say as of right now.
9.
Okay.
10.
12.
Ah!
That's 2 guys being drafted in the top 12. And we're saying, yeah, go fuck your quarterback. I'm sorry, I don't remember. And somebody, if you're watching, if you're in the chat, if you're on Twitter, if you're on YouTube, if you catch this clip on Clip That, if you're in the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Discord, someone tell me the last time a quarterback had 2 top 12 wide receivers. And he was not better than QB 17. I'd like to know, because I think that would be a stretch. And if we're seeing these players get drafted high, and do I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's ADP is where it should be? Fucking no. Absolutely not. I don't think it should be. But we are. So why isn't the quarterback coming along with it? And I think that is what's going to change. I think we're getting the sharps drafting these wide receivers early because it's fun to draft wide receivers, and you're getting guys like Tua falling to that 5th and 6th round, and I don't think that that's going to stick. I really don't.
In the drafts I'm in right now, I mean, Tua's been going up in the 4th so I think it's starting to happen a little bit, especially whenever you have some uncertainty. Like Deshaun Watson's quarterback 8, that has to come down. It's going to come down. And then,
I don't think it will.
You don't think it will? All right.
Nope.
Well, even if we just say top 10 quarterbacks are off limit, with Jalen Hurts being QB 10 in that range, so everyone above him, I don't think he'll pass him. You can make a case that he's going to go over Trevor Lawrence after his horrific rookie season. I don't know if he can pass Matthew Stafford, but some people may say Matthew Stafford can never do that again. And Tua has these new weapons. Let's put him over him. Can go over Trey Lance with his arm fatigue. He can go over Aaron Rodgers if no weapons step up. He can go over Justin Fields if there's no hype around him. There is a very good path for him to start going up. Even if we don't value him as a top 12 quarterback, there are going to be people who can talk themselves into him very easily.
I agree.
And that's also going to help us with trades too. If you got to back whenever he went 105 in the actual draft, and he's been sitting on your bench because you haven't really been able to play him, and now some other owners going to talk themselves into this narrative that he has these elite weapons, and we're not even including Mike Gesicki, who, I mean, he's an athletic freak at tight end. People can talk themselves into him having the most athletic weapons in the league, and they're going to be taking him over people. If somebody tried, or if I had Tua and somebody offered me Justin Fields for Tua right now, I would take that all day.
Really interesting. That's very interesting. I don't think I would do that because I don't think you have to, but I think you're right in that you would take that. Now, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. So he's going at the 17.67. Let's look at expected fantasy points per game according to Pro Football Focus. Tua, let's take away, oh my gosh, Josh Johnson, who was dope, by the way, last year, when you could slide him in there, and then let's take away Nick Foles. That leaves Tua as the 20th. Not even, because there are some ties here. Okay, but let's say for fun and games, it's listed. Let's say that would leave him as the 20th in expected fantasy points per game. Joe Burrow had a 17.3 expected fantasy points per game last year. Tua had a 16.9 expected fantasy points per game. on expectations, they were closer to one another than not. One guy just happened to have some dude, I don't know if you heard of him. His name's Jamar Chase. And in 2 games against Baltimore, he helped Joe Burrow account for something like 24% of his offensive output in just 2 games. So we're looking at Burrow with this all-world offense and taking a giant shit on Tua, who played at 2 points under his expected fantasy points. And I think that people are looking at that, and that's what they're afraid of. But the opportunity was there for him to do it. He just couldn't do it. Now, say what you will, he's a little bit healthier from the old man hip. Sure. Tyreek Hill, brand new system that's going to benefit his skill set, and hope to God he can stay healthy. Because I never wanted to see Jacoby Brissett last year. I'll tell you that much. Right? With a decent running game, maybe a proper game plan, but again, way better offensive line. We had Troy King of Yahoo Fantasy on our show, I think it was a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how absolutely putrid that offensive line was. That their number one player was like the 52nd paid offensive lineman in football or something stupid. Just absolutely atrocious. I think they've done a decent job addressing that. Maybe Mike Gesicki will show up to camp. Right now, he's not really answering their phone calls because he wants a new contract. But Hunter Long, maybe he can play the spot. Who knows? Mike McDaniel, supposed to be a smart guy. We're going to find out. To cap it off, because I've talked about Tua a lot, and I also want to shout out Jacob, FF_RTDB, and the Bulletproof Discord for taking a giant shit on me for drafting Tua in the 4th round, as all you quarterback hoarding individuals were just sniping him off. I believe that Tua will not only get an ADP bump, but I believe Tua will have a very realistic chance of paying off even his current ADP at 17 with the weapons around him. I'm happy drafting him there. I'm happy trading for him at the value. I'm happy getting him. We'll see if the spike happens. But that was the point of this whole thing. We're going to predict. So we got Dameon Pierce. We have Tua. And Tomlie, you picked Allen Robinson, because my memory works really, 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 really well. Okay. Those are the players that we predict will see an ADP spike. We're going to check in on this in a couple of months. We're going to come back and we're going to take a look at these players. Look, if you missed any of the show, you're going to be able to find the replay over there at Triple Play Fantasy and over at the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast YouTube page, and you'll be able to check more clips out over there on the gram, as the kids would say, and over there on the TikTok, as the other kids would say. I wouldn't know. I'm not cool enough. We're going to take a quick second. When we come back, we are actually going to build my running back tiers live on air. Can't wait. Sit tight. Here's a clip from our show with Pat Dougherty, our second show with now friend of the show, Pat Dougherty from NBC Sports Edge.
You know, I just wish that I had worse takes, right? Like it'd be so much nicer if I wasn't so, smart and I didn't have so much foresight, where the running backs that I wanted to draft were falling, right? But do you know how hard it is, like how few running backs I actually like? That when everybody starts drafting the running backs that I like higher, like then what am I to do? Draft Josh Jacobs? I don't understand. Like no. I'm in a truly in a Kobayashi Maru situation here.
Nice.
Travis Etienne used to be like one of the 3 running backs in Dynasty that I was okay with the cost of, and now I'm okay with the cost of no running backs in Dynasty, it seems.
I assume I'm the only person in this room that understands the Kobayashi Maru. We all understand that.
Clip. There's a reason that clip made it. Because I heard that I was on a flight and I spit out my drink on a flight whenever I heard him make that reference.
Yeah, we're nerds here, people. We're going to continue to nerd. Okay, folks, let's talk about what we're going to do right now. We are about to... Tua in the 4th. I thought you were waiting on QB guy. Okay, look, Jamie, I am the wait on QB guy. You could not do it in this draft. And I really mean that. You could not do it. For the record, Jacob Sanderson, FF_RTDB, and Value Extraordinaire took Mac Jones in the 5th. Okay, this was the kind of draft where you did not have a choice. All right. So my taking Tua in the 4th compared to Jacob taking Mac Jones in the 5th just shows the type of draft that this was. I think there was, oh my gosh, I think there was 19 quarterbacks taken in the first 5 rounds or 23 quarterbacks taking the first. It was dumb. And Nicholas just put do. Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us, yo. All right, let's build some running back tiers. I think this is going to be fun. We're going to try to get through 25. We're definitely going to keep the show to an hour. We don't need to keep people here for an hour and 25 watching me need to damn near put my head through a pane of glass just trying to rank running backs. Okay, so we're going to do that. Here we go. Sit tight. We're going to change how things look. Obviously, the 101, I think, is pretty easy.
Yeah. Unanimous.
I think that's fairly unanimous. You're correct. Let's get this in here. Okay, here we are. We are at the official Fantasy Pros ranking. Shout out Fantasy Pros. We appreciate you. All right, obviously 101. We're going to add a tier, right? It's 101. Mm-hmm. We're going to add our second tier. We're going to move that. Oh, my gosh. We're going to move this right here. All right, tier of his own.
Beautiful.
The dead zone starts at 101. It's like Pat Corain said. Isn't Mike McDaniel known for his creative run game, meaning Waddle and Hill will still get points for sweet chest toss, keeping their value high and not helping Tua? Look, maybe and potentially. I don't know how actually sharp Mike McDaniel is because Kyle Shanahan is quite clearly the guy calling the plays. If you listen to what's happened with Debo all offseason, they don't like being used as running backs. I think that you're more likely to see tap passes. I think you're more likely to see a sharp screen game. I think you're likely to see a great intermediate game. The only thing Tua will need to do is improve his deep ball efficiency. Will he lose a couple of touches to handoffs and reverses? But how many of those can they run a game? Right? How many reverses? I think that there's a little bit too much being looked at in that aspect. I think you're going to see a better screen game. I think you're going to see a better crossing route game. I think you're going to see a good drive game within that offense. The rest of it, I'm not sure. Really what it's going to come down to, especially with how it is with pylon-esque quarterbacks, the guys that don't move, is going to come down to touchdowns. So how much better will Tua be in the red zone with these weapons is what is going to really matter, in my opinion. And I'm willing to bet that we see a spike in touchdowns from Tua in that offense, because if Mike McDaniel is not #fake sharp, he should be able to find a way to manufacture that in the red zone. Okay, that's just my opinion. We're going to see how it goes. He is supposed to be really smart in the run game, but then he went and signed Chase Edmonds, who's absolute dog water, and they signed Sony Michel, who's also absolute dog water. So we'll see how much they're able to rely on that running game. All right, look, on his own, Jonathan Taylor, he is number 1. Gents, let's go number 2. I find this to be 2 and 3 are possibly the most challenging spots to make a pick for. I think the easy choice is DeAndre Swift. I don't know if I agree with it, but people seem to really truly believe in the DeAndre Swift could be the RB1. Again, this is what we said last year, so we'll see what happens. I disagree. I want to hear Tomlie, your RB2 in this scenario.
So the best thing about this segment is that I also have been putting this off for this exact reason, because this second tier is a nightmare.
It's kind of gross.
The clear guys that used to occupy this have now aged out to a point where we don't necessarily want them in there, right? Mm-hmm. That's fine as long as the young guys all have good offenses and great opportunity. That's not the case with these guys, right? Swift at the Lions, you've got, hang on, you're scrolling up on me, Tom. Swift at the Lions. Javonte is arguably RB 1.5 in his offense. Najee didn't have an offensive line last year. Breece Hall plays for the Jets. So all the young guys don't have this established ceiling that we want and need, and we've seen in the past. And
it's hard to put a guy like Javonte who shared a backfield, and we're going to put him as the number 2 running back in Dynasty. It's so hard. It's so hard to sit here and decide. But if you're looking at pure receiving outside, even though DeAndre Swift may not have been the most efficient player. I think leaving DeAndre Swift at 2 makes a ton of sense. Number 3, I think it's going to get very, very questionable. But look, I'm not. Oh my God, I actually tried to do that on our screen. I am such a moron. Oh my God. Look, I'm still putting Christian McCaffrey at 3. There is no player that provides you game-winning potential every single week than Christian McCaffrey. And I know he's been hurt, but this is the last year that I'm willing to bet that he can provide you that same boom. He's only, I believe, 25. He should have a year or 2 left. If they dial back, they signed Donta Foreman. Maybe they dial back his carries and really let him run with the catching of the football, which is what we want him to do. They just got Baker. His offense, I can't believe we're going to say this into a microphone, got better with the acquisition of Baker. Oh, God. But he did. It did. So I'm still going to put Christian McCaffrey there. I think I have to. I was always Javonte over Najee. Now, I don't think that's necessarily how you should be playing it in Dynasty. I'm willing to go Najee over Javonte until we see what happens with the Denver Broncos and that team. If they actually let Javonte Williams ride, then I will have no problems Swift swapping that. I can see Christian McCaffrey dropping out of that top 5. Gentlemen, I think I'm going to cap my tier 2 at Javonte Williams. Do we have any disagreements with this?
Lucas, what do you reckon?
I personally do. I'm including Breece Hall into that tier 2. I'm actually have Breece Hall as my number 5 RB over Najee Harris. Because the thing that scares me is that Najee Harris isn't actually a good running back. He is horribly inefficient. Now, he has a great workload, but we've said the same thing about Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
And Josh Jacobs now is tumbling down rankings. And Breece Hall, he's a shiny new toy in a shiny new Jets offense. And I think that he's at least going to have top 5 value in terms of the way that we're looking at these running backs. So for me, I have him in that second tier to where, like, if I have to take a running back, I am perfectly fine taking Breece Hall to be my RB1.
Okay. Yeah. You know what? Okay. You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm actually a fraud. I'm a fraud. I'm an absolute fraud because I just remember the last 3 drafts I've done, I've taken Javonte Williams in the second round ahead of Najee Harris, ahead of Christian McCaffrey.
As you should.
Ahead of Breece Hall, and always after DeAndre Swift because I never want to draft DeAndre Swift. So I think I got to move him to 3 because I've been drafting him there. I can't be a fraud to the people on this show. I have to do it. So, okay, there we go. So we got that. Now, this is part of the reason why I don't want to rank Breece Hall ahead of Najee Harris. What is the chance that you can right now go and trade Breece Hall for Najee Harris in a dynasty league? It is exactly 0.
I have people trying to get DeAndre Swift from me for Breece Hall. So I think that it's
trying to get Swift from you, sure. Because people want to use Breece Hall's 101 value against you. So that's obvious. You have to do that for a quote unquote upgrade. It doesn't mean it's gonna freaking happen. But I can't. Part of the reason when I'm doing these tiers, right? We always talk about Tomlie when we talk about tiers and how to build them and how to trade within them, right? Is what you're comfortable trading that player for one of the other players in that tier with the plus. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to be important to remember this. Now, I think this next tier is going to be an absolute fucking nightmare shit show. But I think one player that's a little bit too far down the list in this tier. So we're on the tier 3, right? We're doing tier 3. Let's do tier 3. I think this has to be done. I think Saquon Barkley. Oh, no, that doesn't have to get done. You move that. Okay. I want to move you right here. Okay. What is happening right now? Why does this not let me just move it right here?
Sometimes it is finicky.
Especially
whenever you have a tier already.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Austin Eckler was really fighting for that number 7 spot. He was pushing forward. He was going to try to find. We love Austin Eckler. We love you, man. You were great this year. I don't think you're going to do as well this year. We're going to find out where I have him. I think Saquon Barkley needs to go on 7. Obviously, the shirtless photos of Saquon Barkley came out. Have to move him up a couple of spots. I think if I missed out on all of these running backs, if there is a Saquon Barkley waiting for me in the 5th round, I would happily take him as my RB1. I'm ready to get hurt again. And the only reason he's not up there with McCaffrey is because even in his peak, I don't think he had the Christian McCaffrey-esque game-breaking potential. So now we see what happens with that offense. I think Saquon Barkley, number 7. I think we're going to be okay with that. Yeah, we're good.
So I have my rankings pulled up as we're doing this because I'm kind of checking myself.
Fuck your rankings.
Too. And I had Saquon at 15 for some unknown reason. I have no
Don't
idea
let Jacob hear that.
there.
Don't let Jacob hear. He's gonna overrule me and fire your ass. He's gonna overrule me.
Because I looked at it and I'm like, Saquon Barkley's definitely over Dalvin Cook. He's definitely over Derrick Henry. And while he carries some injury risk, it's not near the injury risk that Cam Akers is carrying. So he has to go up. I'm not comfortable putting him above Nick Chubb or Eckler or Mixon personally.
Interesting. Yeah.
Just because I feel like that's a much higher risk player. And I know that you're supposed to go for the largest gap or largest range of possible outcomes. You want to have a player who can reach the highest possible outcome. And I think he can. It's just the risk there. It's a little scary for me. So I'll put him in the same tier as those guys, but I think I'd rather have Joe Mixon over Saquon Barkley right now.
Interesting. I would not. I definitely would not rather have Mixon over Barkley. I think what we saw from Mixon was just categorically insane. His touchdown numbers, his efficiency numbers, even his receptions. I just think that team doesn't want to use Mixon that way. It's also the first time Mixon had ever come close to that market share, that many touches in a season. So I understand the risk. I just think Barkley's the better player. So we're going to go better player here at 7. Number 8, kind of tricky at number 8, but I think I would personally rather have I would rather have Cam Akers over Nick Chubb. I would rather have Cam Akers over Alvin Kamara. I would rather have
key, right? So if you are a young person, not young person, if you're new to this and you're building out your own tiers for the first time, there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing this. So for me, it's moving guys out of the tier that I know won't be in there, right? So it's not necessarily that I need to pull someone in because then it gets really complicated. It's pull the guys out you know will not be equal to Saquon. And then from there, you can start to go, well, is anyone lower on the list matchable to that point? And if not, cut your tier nice and clean. Because if you keep adding to it, you'll think the tier needs to be bigger. Focus on the value you know it to be, and then pull the guys out and away from there if you can.
I agree. I'm right there with you. I'd take Mixon over Barkley 100% of the time while he's still on the Giants. See,
and that's fine. The key is it's
fine if you think that way. You gotta believe that they've brought in the right guy, and I think that's what you have to do with the Giants. I think that offense, if healthy, remember he was on the Giants when he blew up, right? When Barkley blew up. So if you're taking risk when it comes to the next bunch of running backs all have injury risk. Eckler last year was one of the first years who was super healthy and age. Dalvin Cook is a walking injury machine. Nick Chubb is actually the most stable, but doesn't catch passes. So his ceiling is RB10. So that's where he's going to be around. Alvin Kamara, suspension plus that offense is absolute dog water. His role has completely changed since Breeze obviously left. So we don't know what he's going to do. You're right. That type of running back is aged out. And then you get types of guys like, I love Travis Etienne. Don't want Etienne over Barkley, right? And this isn't about at cost in this scenario because at cost, I'd rather have everyone after the 20th spot on this list right now at cost than anyone outside of the 101. So,
but this is the process. Sometimes,
so we can't do at cost. So I agree, Nicholas. I totally understand what you're saying. Mixon scored a lot of people, a lot of points. I fear they're going to use guys like P. Ryan and Taylor and Evans a little bit more this year on third down. So if they wanted Mixon in there on third down, they would have done it in the Super Bowl. I guess that was fourth down, and they wouldn't be trying to flip the ball to Samaje freaking P. Ryan for no reason in the biggest. I don't understand coaches. It's really
Nonsensical.
infuriating.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
but anyway,
between Barkley and Chubb, Tom, is there anyone in that 6 that you're pulling out of this tier?
man,
I pulled Kamara out.
all of them.
Kamara for me is the one that has the flag, and it's because, like you said, the offense, not necessarily the suspension, it's the offensive change.
So here's the thing. I would rather have. We're gonna put ETN way up here at 12.
Wow.
Yep.
I thought I was high on ETN.
I think he belongs at 12. We're gonna do this. Okay. I feel like this is how it has to go for these young guys here. I think I would put Eckler at 8. He's got the contract, PPR, good offense. I think 8 is fine.
And the ceiling. He can win you weeks. Like that is, yeah.
Joe Mixon, good offense, contract, can catch the ball, score a lot of touchdowns. I think we have it right here. Joe Mixon at 9. Dalvin Cook, I'm weary of. And one of the reasons, now this may be my tiers and this may be the ranks that we're talking about here, but a guy like Dalvin Cook, I'm just as happy having a guy like Leonard Fournette. I think Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook should be valued equally in your dynasty leagues. Now, that is very hard to do in this format of ranks and clusters.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to end up doing is going back and doing some, we're going to do some edits where I think Dalvin Cook should be treated. We're going to do it right now. Cook should be treated closer to 4. Oh my God. You're going to see my terrible spelling.
Could have gone with Leonard.
Just look a little bit down the list.
Not. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Okay, Cook should be treated closer to Fournette than not. Boom.
Nice.
That's going to go up because that's how I view him. That's what I think about him. All right. So we've done Mixon at 9, Cook at 10 that I don't totally feel comfortable with.
Yep.
We're going to go with a flag. We can actually flag them right here.
Yep.
We can go
with
Dalvin Cook. Avoid. We're going to go avoid. Can I just avoid all of them?
I don't think I have a single one of these players on my roster.
Target.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess that's the thing for people who have established rosters. Like the other thing with developing tiers and rankings is, are you then going to make moves based on this? Because
Jamie's even higher. I have ETN at 9. Next year we'll be talking about him outside the top 5.
I have no problem with ETN going high because, I mean, draft cap, talent, explosiveness. He's with the quarterback he was in college. Like, there's a lot going for them. But having said that, if that offense is still absolute shit, you're talking about a worse Saquon Barkley in a worse offense. So there's a lot. I
have a hard time keeping Nick Chubb out of the top 12.
I haven't.
Well, for the next 2 years, he's going to be equal to that mark of around that 10, like you said. So that's where he's got to be, right? He's got to be in that tier.
Yeah. And he's arguably the best runner in the
pure
NFL.
Runner.
I don't care about I don't care about the pure runner stuff.
Tom's don't give a shit about pure runners.
You could not pay me enough money to give a single shit about you being a pure runner in the NFL or not. You can't pay me enough money to care about that. That doesn't help me put up fantasy points. Look, we said we were going to get to 25. Let's try to get to 25. We got about 15 minutes left.
So where are you ending your tier 3?
Where are we cutting the tier? Yeah.
So I think tier 3 has to get cut off at 12.
So
I think
Derrick Henry the one who missed it?
Yes, Derrick Henry's for sure missing it. Are you kidding?
Okay.
I want Derrick Henry.
I still have Derrick Henry in my tier 3, but he's the very last one in it, so that's fine. Like I'm not going to have an issue with you putting him in tier 4.
Because I think the beauty about that, Lucas, is that the acquisition cost of Derrick Henry in startup drafts, if you have him that high, is highly appropriate. You're able to get a value on a guy that you think can be season changing and defining. And to be honest, all these guys are. It's just that we've sort of changed our mental approach as to how we're doing the whole RB drafting thing because of the replaceability later on. As that replaceability starts to filter out, as guys age out and newer guys have to come in, it may change again. A couple of years' time, we might see these younger guys establish themselves with clarity and with skill, especially next year with that draft class coming through. So this year in particular, it is probably the most difficult we've had over the last few years of trying to do this tiering system because of the age of the guys we've loved for so many years.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's important to sit down and do this with the people. We're being completely transparent on how about and obviously this is a shortened, right, part of this process. This is a very shortened
you go back
version.
and tweak. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into deciding your tiers. But yeah, the big dog, shout out to the big dog. I think I'm going to put him at a hard avoid. Right. We're going to target Nick Chubb, even though he doesn't catch passes, and the offense is going to be abysmal. If Deshaun Watson, I was going to make a terrible joke there. I'm glad I didn't. Deshaun Watson not being on the field and it being Jacoby Brissett. But I think Kamara at 15, I think is totally fair. Now, having Kamara over Gibson, I think this just comes down to pure talent. I'm concerned about Antonio Gibson, but it's hard to put him any lower with his age, and he's been pretty good in points per game the last 2 years, so we're going to keep him there.
The concern for me is opportunity with Gibson, right? Like, it's not that he's not explosive and not talented. It's purely just will they use him in a manner that makes him worth that spot.
Well, I think it's fantasy manager's fault for the hype of Antonio Gibson. A guy that had never played running back before, or not really played running back before. And we wanted him to be a receiver because that's what he played. And then he didn't get to do that. And then all of a sudden it was a problem.
The two highest scoring opportunities for running backs are on passing downs and are in the red zone, and they have specialty backs for each of those places right now. So that's just, as much as I love Antonio Gibson, it's hard to put him in the same tier as a Dalvin Cook or a Cam Akers. So he's in my tier 4 right now, also behind Kamara.
Yeah. And he has to be behind Kamara. I mean, suspension, whatever. It's going to be 6 games, probably, maybe less. I mean, that's not injury. So, right. And he's got the contract. Like, he's good. He's set. He's G. Just, decided to get into a fight in Vegas, which in Vegas, you're going to do Vegas things. I think the interesting players at this point are the next 3: Walker, Dillon, Dobbins.
Yeah. All of them are in tier 4 for me.
Yes. These 3, in my opinion, are completely interchangeable.
Yeah.
Except I actually would prefer, and as you can see, I would prefer Dillon to Kenneth Walker, because A.J. Dillon has shown that he will catch passes in that offense. I believe he was coming up on, oh my God, he had way too many receptions last year. I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was in the 40s. He went from he may never catch a pass in the NFL to he was able to not only catch passes, but be a go-to weapon for Aaron Rodgers. And guess what? Aaron Rodgers ain't got no fucking receivers of note yet. Like, still, Alan Lazard, whoop-de shit. Christian Watson struggles. I saw somebody say that Christian Watson was a route technician coming out of college, and I just wanted to find whoever wrote that and sit them down, have them look me in the eyes, and tell them that Christian Watson was a route technician.
Do you ever feel like some people just sit there and throw out takes to move people down?
Well, that's one of
people they don't like up boards. Like, that's how it feels.
That's one of the things I was talking about with Pat Doherty on the last show, is that how do you, in this content dead zone season, not just feel like you have to put content out because you've been researching it, right? And that's a very real thing. So, all right, look, we got to finish 25. So I think I'm ready to cap this tier. I think I'm going to cap this tier after J.K. Dobbins.
See, I have Aaron Jones up there just because I think that he's going to have a really, really good season. And
right,
I think
this is Dynasty, though.
Why. Yeah, I know it's Dynasty, but even still, I think that he has enough value this season to keep him in tier 4 to where, like, after all of those guys go, I'm still okay with drafting Aaron Jones there.
Yeah.
Around that same range. Yes, I rather have Walker and Dillon before him, but I'm okay taking Aaron Jones. He's a great consolation prize.
The issue for me with Jones, if you put Jones in that tier, then I'd start arguing Fournette, Connor, these guys who all have a 2-year window of scoring. So as soon as you open it, and as soon as you add it to the youth of a Dobbins, a Walker, a Dillon, for me, that tier either becomes massive or it doesn't have a defined point. Now, that's not to say that Dobbins is hugely more valuable than a Jones to your team. You'd prefer the tier down, but that's just how it's going to be for me in startups. If you're looking for
fair enough,
like length of opportunity, it has to be either capped at youth, or you may as well put all of them together. Because I think it's going to become very much of a muchness with these next few guys.
And I'm very okay with that. I see a bigger gap between Aaron Jones and Leonard Fournette than it seems like you all do.
For the next
I
2
would-
years, Aaron
That's
Jones
fine.
could outscore all of those guys. Like that's the odd bit of all of this. So
And so I'm the person in your leagues you need to look at and go, that's the person I'm selling Aaron
That
Jones
guy.
to.
yeah,
And that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's somebody I'm okay taking that risk on and having a little higher. So tier 5, this was the biggest tier for me. This was a
Interesting.
really big tier.
Interesting. Yeah, not for me. I mean, once you get outside of look, we did it. We're at an hour. We're at an hour 1.
Mhm.
We're gonna go back through all the tiers and go through it. But I've done to 25. Look, Aaron Jones at 20. We've talked about this on the show at length, right? NBA is rigged was in here. He was pretty much tired of us talking about Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon to the point where he hasn't been back today. We're gonna go check in on him and make sure
I
that
did,
he's
I
doing
did
all
share
right.
the link to that one. I thought he was,
And he's in a couple of
yeah.
discords I'm in too. So we're gonna find him. We're gonna
Check
get
out.
him. Make sure
I'll
he's
check.
okay. But I want Leonard Fournette because, like I said, Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook, even though in the rankings and in the tiers are a little further apart, I don't really think they should be viewed further apart. I think that they're a lot closer than people may think.
Mhm.
Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott is a hot button of conversation in the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast circle. Excuse me. Oh my God.
don't get
Professionalism
emotional, Tom.
here.
It's okay.
Just bringing him up makes my body's biology act really weird. It's super tough. Anyway, carrying on, going through it. I think that he still has to be kind of put in this upper
I
mid
agree.
tier of RB2 in Dynasty. Say what you want about the contract or his decline or that he's being drafted in the dead zone now. All of that is fine if you have Ezekiel Elliott. This is right about where you can expect him to be within a value portion of this, because you're not trading him away for a second round pick and you're not getting him for a second round pick.
Yeah.
For the most part, we're not like that's not an actionable possibility. We all say it would be. I wouldn't trade a second for Z. You're not going to get him for that anyway. So it's easy to say that, but for the most part, maybe a 201 if the right player falls, maybe, but not likely. So I think that I'm good with this, and I want to put Elijah Mitchell and James Cook above David Montgomery because I believe David Montgomery is at risk of losing more touches to Khalil Herbert than people might think. He's on a contract year. He's a volume-dependent running back who's not super athletic. I think Mitchell is going to be exactly what he was last year. Had a couple of games where he actually did catch passes. We'll see what happens with Trey Lance. I'm not worried about TDP coming in. I think TDP is more to replace Trey Sermon than it is to and Deebo Samuel's role than it is to cut into Mitchell's role. I think 20 touches in the San Francisco offense weekly. I think that's good enough to put him there, especially for a good athlete. So Elijah Mitchell,
really good
24.
I think that's a really good point about San Francisco's backfield that we haven't touched on a lot, and I haven't seen touched on a lot, is that they're going to have to replace some of what Deebo did last year because Deebo doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah,
and if they want to keep one of the most talented players in the NFL happy and on their team, they're going to find somebody who's going to take some of that load off of him. So
correct. Yep.
I move Elijah Mitchell down more because I was looking at TDP as coming in to replace his role, but I think that's a really good point that he might be coming in.
The role
to
expands
help
enough
take-
to allow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they saw
Exactly.
what they needed to see from Trey Sermon, and I think they figured they needed a more athletic guy to play in that spot because Sermon was never that athletic. His selection was bewildering in every manner of
You can argue you saw
of
it
the
in
word.
college, but it took them
And
a
it
year
got
extra,
me.
so that's fine.
He wasn't even good enough in college to secure the key role in the offenses he was in. It was just a
Exactly what I mean.
bad call.
Yeah.
I think he's a special teamer. I think that he's a 3 to 4 touch a week guy, if that. So I think TDP is coming to take a little bit away from Mitchell, who was hurt quite a bit. But every time he got hurt, he came back to a bigger workload. So we'll see what happens this year. And to kind of spell Deebo, who will hopefully for him and wanting to stay in San Francisco, have that role cut down in half. So Elijah Mitchell makes the top 25. James Cook gets in the top 25. Look, JJ Zachariason himself said on this show, on the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast main show, that he would take James Cook out of all the other backs in that offense just because of potential upside with pass catching. We'll see. So with his draft capital, athleticism, we're going to put him at 25. James Conner at 23. I think James Conner with the new contract in that offense.
Cool.
Chase Edmonds is gone. Keontae Ingram's unknown. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the other guy Jacob has not stopped talking about. It's just embedded in my brain, but I've forgotten. Basically, there's no other running back really behind him. I believe they did sign, I believe Damian, oh my God, Darrell Williams. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But I think James Conner is going to score enough touchdowns that I think he's
Benjamin, by the way.
Benjamin, that's the one. But there's really no one behind him. So I'm treating James Conner much like Jones, Fournette, Elliott, and Conner are all pretty much the same player to me, and I would just rather have Aaron Jones.
I'm looking at my team. I have a lot of these guys.
Yeah. A lot. I have a lot because they've been the best values. If you're passing on this tier 3 and tier 4 in fantasy, those other guys in this tier 5, I think are perfect fit. So obviously the 101 at Taylor, obviously he's a target. Obviously you want to have him on your team. You love him. DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Najee Harris, Breece Hall are going to cap tier 2. And I want to point out that I was reluctant to pop Breece Hall into this, but I gave benefit of the doubt to Lucas, who swayed me. Tier 3, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Cam Akers, Travis Etienne Jr., and Nick Chubb is a disgusting tier out of the top 12, but they are there. They're doing their thing. I think this is the one we're going to see a lot of the 2023 running backs come in and make their way through this. And then tier 4 is super disgusting. Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Kamara, Gibson, Dillon, Kenneth Walker, and J.K. Dobbins. So let's Taylor, Swift, Javonte, McCaffrey, Harris, Breece Hall, Barkley, Eckler, Mixon, Akers, Etienne, Chubb, Cook, Henry, Kamara, Gibson, Dillon, Walker the third, Dobbins, Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, Elijah Mitchell, and James Cook is going to walk out the top 25 for the show today. Big shout out to everyone for helping us get through that. Little bit different content idea from the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast today. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Let's get some final thoughts before we get the heck out of here. Let's go, Tomlie. Final thoughts.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions about that process or wants to help work on their own tiers, by all means hit us up on any of the social media platforms that we're on. More than happy to help. Final thoughts for me. We always need an Aussie slang, or what? I don't know if you want an Aussie slang, you're going to get one. This week it's Bonza. Bloody Bonza. Bonza. So Bonza just means fantastic. Yeah, so it'll be, I'm sure it's in voice lines for over Australianized games. It'll be the sort of things that you hear at like an Outback Steakhouse. Where it's like, oh mate, the steak's Bonza. Fucking Bonza. So that's, it's probably a little even a two Aussie for most of us Aussies. It's been just sort of captured the imagination of the Americanized Aussie. So enjoy Bonza. Not sure I'll be using it too much, but go for it.
I love it. I always love them. I love trying to fit these into my vocabulary. Final thoughts here, Lucas?
I think something that's really interesting about these tiers is just where I am trying to get the most of. And it looks like tier 4 and tier 5 are where I'm really trying to hammer home running backs right now, especially because of how much people are willing to overpay to get people in the tier 2 and tier 3. And you can get similar production, especially for such a short shelf life position, and cycle through and keep adding assets. I think that's really interesting that we're going to be seeing here. Nothing too crazy in terms of where we have people in our tiers, very minor differences, at least from what I have. So I think it's really good. I'm glad you finally got your RB tiers done.
That's just the top half. There's like 110 of them in there we got to get through, but doesn't mean they're all necessary, I guess. Look, that's the show for the day. Big shout out to everyone who joined us, getting into the comments. Obviously, Andy, Jamie, Nicholas, we appreciate every single one of you guys. Look, Tuesday, we have Drew, the Bulletproof Discord. He's going to pop back on us. We are going to discuss VORP and what that actually means and how to apply it. Full Tilt Dynasty podcast Tuesday night at it's going to be a little bit later, I believe. It's probably going to be a 9 or 10 Eastern time start because we need to accommodate Drew and the family life as we understand. But we're going to be doing a series of understanding terminology. What is actually a bust? What does VORP mean and how to apply it? Things like that. We're going to start breaking that down. We're going to be back here next week on the Walkabout. We are going to build my wide receiver tiers. So can't wait to discuss that. We're going to do this again. We're going to have another ADP gimmick, maybe even a trade game. Who knows? Come back next time for your Aussie slang. Look, I also want to remind everybody, go to the Scott Fishbowl Podathon site. Go get the links for their donation for Toys for Tots. Go and donate. Do what you can. Every little bit helps, from $1 to $5 to as much as you can or feel like. There's no pressure to do so, but we highly encourage it. It's one of those things that gets to happen every year that does some real good and provides real change in the world. We were happy to be sponsors this year. We were happy to be featured this year. I don't know who thought it'd be a good idea to allow Full Tilt to go on right after Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers, but we did it, and it was an honor to do so. And we hope to be back next year. Look, as for us, I want to remind everyone to be kind to one another. Look out for the others in your friends circles, in your family. Check in on them, even if you don't think you need it. Remember that there are people on the other side of your keyboard. It's important to be kind to one another as often as we can and be conscious of it. It's also important to remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose in your best days. Well, damn, they're always spent tilting. Good night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe.